Innuendo, Book 5 of the Todd Mills Mystery Series. Author R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher Scribble Pub Press, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 33. It was the concrete that woke Todd, cool and smooth against his left cheek. It was as refreshing as a cold, damp washcloth on a hot summer day, and just as invigorating. His eyes fluttered, then popped open. Lying on his side, he didn't move, just gazed around at the huge empty space and saw a small bird, a sparrow, flutter toward a window and bang its body over and over against the glass. Who the hell was he? The stale odor of horse manure and straw sparked the memory that his eyes could not. He was at the state fair in the horse barn, and his head hurt like hell. Right. He'd come here to meet John Lyman, and then, using both hands, he pushed himself up and then sat there, looking around, sure that John Lyman's body would be lying just a few feet away, bloody and lifeless. Instead, there was no one and nothing. Todd turned toward the horse stall against the far wall, wondered if he'd done it in there, gone back to the small space and blown his brains out. Groaning and rubbing his head, Todd got up and started moving slowly, not at all eager to discover someone's remains. John, he called rather feebly. As he approached the stall, he expected to see the large man laid out within the 4 heavy wooden walls of the stall. Instead, except for Todd's cell phone, which lay smashed in pieces, it was perfectly empty. There was no sign of John Lyman, nor, for that matter, the saddle he had so lovingly tended. Leaning against the stall, Todd touched the side of his head and felt the epicenter of the pain, which, like a hangover, was thick and nauseating and rippled from his head to his stomach. At least Lyman wasn't dead. At least Todd had prevented that, although perhaps only temporarily. And that, Todd thought, was a good point, for if Lyman hadn't killed himself in here, then perhaps he'd gone off and done the deed elsewhere. Perhaps he'd stormed out and done it in the front seat of his truck. Pretty. As his senses regrouped, he realized he had to get to the station. He had a broadcast to do. Checking his watch, he stared at the small face and thin hands. Shit! It was 6:15. He hadn't lain on the concrete for 5 or 10 minutes, but almost an hour. Panicking, he bent down and started grabbing at the pieces of his cell phone, the main body right in front of him. The battery over on one side of the stall, and then a couple of small pieces scattered like marbles. His hand shaking, Todd tried cramming the battery in, but it wouldn't stay. He jammed something into something, but the plastic body was entirely cracked. It was beyond hopeless. Clearly, he'd missed his spot. There was going to be hell to pay for this. But what could he do? It was, he thought, as his head throbbed, already too late to simply warn them. Turning, he started for the door, moving none too fast. As he stepped out into the evening light, he saw his Cherokee sitting right where he had left it. John Lyman's pickup, however, was gone, which meant, of course, that he'd been alive when he'd left. Thank God for small miracles. Todd rubbed his brow, went around and unlocked his truck. He tossed the broken pieces of his cell phone on the passenger seat and climbed in. What he needed now was a long hot shower, and then something about 7:30, right? He was supposed to do something, be somewhere, meet someone. Of course, he had a date with Tim Chase. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.